Hi everyone. So I'll continue exploring Azure platform, Azure cloud platform, with more focus on this time creating near real-time data streaming pipeline using Azure and Confluent. So we'll start with DataGen source connector. The data will come from there. It will be pumped into Confluent topic, and from Confluent topic, we'll use Azure Functions Sink Connector to pull the data from Confluent topic and write to Cosmos DB. And then from Cosmos DB, you can use the data for analytics purposes on Power BI or Tableau. So this is the data pipeline that we'll try to build to simulate near real-time data streaming pipeline. There are a few steps into building this. The first step is to build a Confluent cluster, topic, source connector. This is, of course, for testing or proof of concept. The next step is that we'll set up the Azure Function app and it will create function within it with HTTP trigger. The third step is to set up and configure Azure Function Sink Connector on Confluent, and we need to point that to the function app and then the function that we created in the step above. And then the fourth step is we'll start the data flow on the connector. We'll verify, make sure the data is flowing into topic. We'll make sure the data is flowing into Azure function. Then we'll create Cosmos DB account into Azure, and then we'll create the database and the container into Cosmos account. And then we'll update our Azure function code to parse the data as it is received from Kafka, and we'll insert, upsert into Cosmos DB. And then we'll verify the flow end to end. We'll verify the flow from right from the source connector to the topic to the function to Cosmos DB, all the way through. And then as a final step, we'll also try to connect Power BI to our Cosmos DB and see how we can use it for analytics purposes. All right, so let's get started with step number one. I'm logged into my Confluent account. I already created a cluster. So the cluster is hosted on Azure in the West US2 region. I don't have any API keys right now. I don't have any topics. I don't have any connectors. So we'll create all of those. So let's just start with first creating the topic. So we'll have order data created. So we'll just say orders. We'll leave everything else default, and we'll just create the topic, and that gets our topic created. So we have the topic called orders. Now let's go connect. Let's pump in the data into that topic. So we have sample data gen source connector. So source connector is one which generates the data and puts into topics. So we'll put data into orders topic where you want to send data to. Let's continue to the next step. Next step is create an API key and generate API key, and we'll call it Confluent Azure Cosmos key. All right, so let's continue. And we will have JSON underscore SR format, so that is more helpful um, on Azure side. So we'll select that format, and we're looking for orders data. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so and then we'll pick orders data. It's right here, JSON SR schema, and I think that's the only configuration. And we go ahead and leave, say, and we'll name this as source connector and continue. So we are on the review and launch. So what it will do is it will start creating the data and start populating the topic as it gets provisioned. So we can go in here. Like so, right now, date because the connector is not up and running, this data is empty. But now the data has started to flow in, and this is how the data looks like. So it has order ID, item ID, order units, address, and it has its own city state zip layout. So this is the kind of schema for the orders. Now let's go ahead and pause the connector and let's go to step number. So we'll go ahead and pause the connector here. All right, so let's go to the next step of creating Azure Function app and Azure Function within it. So I'll go. So I've created a folder here, blank folder, and then I'm going to open terminal and point to that folder, and then we'll start Visual Studio Code. So there we have Visual Studio Code. Now there is I already installed Azure extensions here, and I think it should pick up my subscription and account. So it already picked that. And what we'll do is we'll create a function here. So right click, click create function, and select the folder. So folder Python, Python 3.12. We'll use HTTP trigger. Name of the function we'll say HTTP trigger underscore NRT AZ Confluent to Azure. We'll leave it anonymous. Okay, so that's created the function with. So that created the function with some um, like template code. And if you look at the files here, so these are the files that it created. It has that requirements.txt even, and this is where the code is. Terminal. Okay, so that resolved that. Um, so now we have our function, but we need to first create a function app. So let's go here under our account. So this function app, right click, create function app in Azure Advanced. So name of the function app, so we can say Confluent to Azure pipeline. Hit enter. Hosting plan will have consumption plan, location. Now we need to make sure that it is same region as our cluster, which was in US West 2. So we'll select US West 2. Runtime stack 3.12. This will select default. We'll create a new resource group. We'll put RG at the end and storage account. Create new. Application insights. Application insight resource group. That will go ahead and create the function app, and we should be able to see it here on the left hand side here as well as on the portal as well. All right, so it's created here. So this is where it shows, and if we look at into our account, and let's see if it's created here. So let's go to function app, and yeah, here there it is. And if you go in here right now, we don't have any functions created yet. So it's in US West 2, but there's no functions here. So we'll create one, deploy one. So we already have this function What we'll do is we'll deploy this. So go ahead and deploy using Visual Studio Code. It will ask for function, the pipeline function, deploy. All right, so we have the Azure function deployed successfully here. So we can go ahead and look here under the pipelines. If you look under pipeline, we should be able to see our function. So it's right there. And then if we go to the console, we should be able to see in the console as well. So it's right here. And then you can click on it and you can see code plus test, integration, function keys, and things like that. And this is the exact same code that we have on Visual Studio Code. So now let's go ahead and go back to Confluent and go to step number 3. So the step number 3 is to set up and configure the sync connector and point to the function. So let's go ahead and create the sync connector. So let's go to the connector, add connectors, and then let's look for Azure Function Sink Connector, and we'll configure it. So want to get data from orders, and we want to use existing key. So we'll just use existing key here. Key and the secret here. Let's continue. And we need information from Azure to add here. So function URL and function key. So function URL, click on this, and we get the function URL. We get the function key URL. So use that. Remove the question mark at the end so it matches with whatever is described here. Function key. Now let's go to function keys, and then we can copy the function key from there to here. And let's continue. And we'll have format JSON underscore SR. And there are advanced things that we can do. One of the things that I've tried in the past is the single message transpose SMT, so you can use that. But we'll skip for, we don't have any data which really needs any special processing here, so we'll continue with the default setup. Continue. And then we'll name this as NRT Function Cosmos Sink Connector. So okay, so we have the data paused, and then we are starting this connector. And so this connector has up and started running. So let's go to logs and see if it shows anything here. It's not showing anything here right now, but what we can do is we can start the data flow here, and then the data will be picked up by the sync connector. So okay, so the data has started to come in, and there is an error, but we'll resolve those with the code that we can use. But the data is coming in as it's getting pushed from the source connector. So let's pause this,